The title of the novel I will be reading for you in the next few weeks is called The Snark Out Boys and the Avocado of Death. Chapter 1. I thought that going to high school was going to be a big improvement over what I was used to. It turned out to be just the opposite. For example, there's the biology notebook. The biology notebook is what we do in my biology class. Every page in every kid's notebook is exactly the same as every page in every other kid's notebook. We have to copy out these long, boring things the teacher writes on the blackboard. And we have to copy pictures from the textbook. One of the assignments is to copy the picture of a grasshopper and letter in all the labels showing what the different parts of the grasshopper are. The labels are in the textbook too. When the notebook is all finished, we're supposed to put it in a folder and make a nice cover. We can put on anything we like. If the cover is really nice and artistic, you'll get an A on the notebook and for the course. If you copy everything you're supposed to and your cover is only so-so, you'll get a B. A kid with a sloppy handwriting, one who can't draw, might get a C. I would say that the biology notebook is typical of what goes on at Genghis Khan High School. I've been going to that school for 8 months, and I still can't believe how utterly boring, nauseating, stupid, and generally crummy it is. I don't have a single class I like. I don't have a single teacher who's the least bit interesting. What's worse, most of the kids don't seem to care that the school stinks. They don't like it, but they aren't outraged about it. They just go through the motions like robots or zombies. The big thing for most of the kids is getting into various kinds of trouble outside of school. For my part, getting a hold of beer and throwing up every weekend isn't more interesting than the school. I think I might have gone crazy in that miserable school if it hadn't been that I got to be friends with Winston Bongo. Winston Bongo is a very creative person. He's the inventor of snarking out. He also holds the world's record for number of snark outs successfully completed. Until he invented snarking, no one on Earth had ever snarked, as far as we knew. And until I became a snarker, Winston was the only person to do it. I have the second greatest number of snarks to my credit, but I have no solo snarks at all, so I guess you could say that I was the co-inventor of team snarking. I met Winston Bongo on the first day of Mrs. Macmillan's English class. He came in late. He'd gotten delayed trying to borrow a Jewish star to wear to class. This is one of the few positive things that I have noticed at Genghis Khan High School. This Mrs. Macmillan has something against Jews. Years ago, she used to make speeches about Jews in her classroom. So this tradition got started. Every semester, kids who aren't Jewish and Jewish kids who don't have them borrow Jewish stars to wear around their necks in Mrs. Macmillan's class. It's fun to watch her panic when she realizes that she's facing another all-Jewish class. She believes that Jews creep around, plotting to end civilization, and seeing all those stars of David makes her crazy. The first time I met Winston Bongo was in that class. On the first day, he walked in and tripped. He fell on the floor with more noise than I would have thought possible for one kid to make just falling down. It sounded like a chest of drawers falling downstairs. I didn't know who he was at the time, but I noticed that he was sort of heavy and thick in his body. His black hair looked like it had been cropped with dog clippers. His nose was long and fat at the same time, and his eyes seemed to wander against his will. The poor kid is retarded, I thought. I'll be nice to him. Winston Bongo gathered up the books and pencils and sheets of paper he'd strewn everywhere when he fell. He sat down in the seat next to mine. Later on, I would find out that Winston Bongo thought when he first saw me, the poor kid is retarded. Winston thought, I'll be nice to him. The fact is, I probably look as weird as Winston Bongo. I'm about the shortest kid in school, also the fattest. People refer to me as No Neck. It's my nickname. I don't care for it. I happen to look like a penguin. Is that so bad? The other thing that makes Winston Bongo appear to be not right in the head is his funny smile he's got. When he was taking that incredibly loud and clumsy fall, he was smiling, sort of, to himself, with no teeth showing. It turns out that Winston Bongo is a fantastic wrestler. He's taken private lessons at a professional gym, and he knows hundreds of falls and tumbles. His uncle is a professional wrestler. You can see him on television sometimes. His name is the Mighty Gorilla. Of course, I didn't know any of this that day. I didn't know that Winston Bongo had taken the fall to amuse himself on purpose. I just thought he was a big klutz. After class, Winston Bongo looked at me. From the way he was looking, I thought he was going to make some remark like calling me no-neck or fire plug. I had this momentary feeling of anger and humiliation. Here I was about to be insulted by a kid who was obviously feeble-minded and had gotten over his own feet not half an hour before. But he didn't say anything insulting. He said, "You ever do any wrestling? You've got the build for it." Winston Bongo lives in an apartment building about a block from the one I live in. His building is slightly more complicated to snark out of because they have an elevator man. In my building, the elevator is self-service. That makes snarking out less of a challenge. Winston Bongo has to sneak down 11 flights of the service stairs and then slip past the little room where the elevator man sits watching the late movie on television. All I have to do is get dressed in the dark, get out of the apartment without waking my parents, take the self-service elevator to the basement garage, and go out a side exit so the night watchman in the lobby won't see me. Then I meet Winston Bongo and we take the Snark Street bus all the way downtown and get off across the street from the Snark Theater. That's the main part, the technical part, of snarking out, except for the hats, of course. You have to wear a hat when snarking out. The idea is to keep anyone from guessing that you're underage when you ride the bus or buy your tickets at the Snark Theater. I question whether this works or whether anybody cares that we're kids. We've each got a fake student activity card from the Hun State University. Winston got them from his sister, who goes there. Mine has a girl's picture on it and is fixed up with a ballpoint pen. It wouldn't fool anybody if they looked at it closely, but nobody ever does. And we get the student discount, 50 cents at all times, at the Snark. Still, Winston invented snarking out and he insists on hats. They have to have brims so we can keep our faces in shadow. I have a cowboy hat and Winston has a regular snap brim his father used to wear years ago. The Snark Theater has a different double bill every day, and it's open 24 hours around the clock. It shows movies I've never heard of, and it shows them in strange combinations. For example, a typical double bill might consist of a Yugoslavian film with subtitles, Vampires in a Deserted Seaside Hotel at the End of August, and along with it, Invasion of the Bagaloids, in which rock-hard, intelligent bagels from outer space attack Earth. Everybody gets bopped on the head until the scientists figure out a way to defeat the bagaloids. I won't spoil the ending by telling what it is, but it has something to do with cream cheese. I wouldn't say that every movie in the Snark Theater shows is good, but they're all interesting in their way. Another nifty thing about the Snark Theater is that there's a box in the lobby. You can write down the name of any film that was ever made and drop the slip of paper in the box, and the Snark Theater will get that film and show it. They send you a letter with a free ticket on the day that they show the film you asked for, and if you tell them your birthday, they send you a free ticket on your birthday as well. Winston Bongo found out about a movie from his uncle, the Mighty Gorilla. It was a film his uncle had seen once when he was wrestling in Germany. It was called The Beethoven Story, the life story of Ludwig van Beethoven. Winston requested it, and a couple of months later, we snarked out and saw it. Winston saw it for free. We were always looking for obscure, unknown films to ask for. The difficult part is finding out about those films, unknown as they are. Of course, we could go to the Snark Theater at ordinary times instead of slipping out of the house when our parents are sleeping, but that would not be snarking out. On a typical snarking out evening, I go home right after school and do my idiotic homework. While doing that, I like to listen to the radio. Lately, I've become something of a classical music freak. There's this radio station, WGNU, that plays all kinds of classical music. My favorite composer is this guy named Mozart. My parents don't go in for much music at all. Once in a while, they watch a singer on television, and that's about it. In addition to doing my mindless homework and listening to some music, I feed my bird and clean up his cage. My bird is a parakeet. I bought him at the dime store. I also got him a king-size cage so he wouldn't feel too crowded. When I'm home, I close the door to my room and let him fly around. His name is Nosferatu. He used to be called Pete Parakeet. I changed his name after I saw this old movie at the Snark. It's called Nosferatu, and it's the original Dracula story. It's 10 times as scary as the version you see on television. The guy who plays the vampire is really bizarre. My parakeet is also bizarre too. He's pale and skinny, if you can imagine a skinny parakeet. He looks like he's in bad health, but he's really alright. I've had him for about 3 years, and the whole time he's looked as if he might drop dead any minute. So I renamed him Nosferatu, after the skinny vampire in the movie. My parents were not too happy about me bringing home a pet. Also, my mother said that birds are bad luck. You have to watch out for her. She makes up superstitions on the spur of the moment. For example, I actually believed it was bad luck to get a haircut on Thursdays until I was about 11 years old. I might have believed it longer, but I noticed that my mother had changed the unlucky day to Tuesday. She also told me that if you eat cherries and drink milk at the same time, you'll be dead within half an hour. I think one time someone she knew, maybe her boss where she worked, ate some cherry pie and a glass of milk and then happened to die a little while later. It's hard to track these things down because if you question my mother directly about anything, she gets cagey and denies everything. She says she's not superstitious. On the evening I'm telling about now, my father called me to supper. "Walter, come see what I've got." What he had was an avocado. Whenever he brings one home, which is fairly often, he makes a big fuss about it. "Looky, Walter, an avocado. What do you think of it?" My father is the only person I know who says looky. He also says look it. What I think of avocados is this. On principle, I do not eat green, slimy things. My mother doesn't eat them either. She says she doesn't like the taste of avocado. That's good enough for me. If there's any question at all about the taste, I'm leaving those suckers alone. My father loves them. Every time he brings one home, he acts like it's a 300-pound sailfish he's caught single-handed, or an elk he brought down with a bow and arrow. He's really enthusiastic about avocados. He skins them and digs out that oversized, stupid-looking pit and then mashes up the creamy slime part with a fork. Then he puts lemon juice and vinegar and salt and pepper and powdered garlic and paprika on it. If you have to go through all that trouble to disguise the flavor, why bother, I say. When he makes a speech about, "My goodness, this is one fine avocado," he says, "You have to know how to choose them. You have to look for the ones that are black and blasted looking. The pretty green ones aren't fit to eat. The funny thing is that they reduce the price of really scrumptious ones just because they're ugly. I guess they want to sell them before they rot completely." My father isn't a bad guy in my opinion. There are just a few subjects, like avocados, on which he's irrational. My mother had found another tuna casserole recipe. This is something of a hobby with her. She's constantly finding these recipes in women's magazines. She tries another one at least once a week. They all taste like tuna fish. Usually they have things in them you wouldn't expect to eat with tuna fish, like grapes, hot pickle slices, and fried Chinese noodles. "I hope you appreciate this, kiddo," my mother says. "Seeing that your mother took a healthy slice out of her finger whilst chopping up the ingredients." She usually manages to injure herself at least once while preparing a meal. She has a band-aid on her finger. "Eat up, champ," she says. "It's American." My mother has an idea that tuna caught in Japanese waters is tainted with radioactivity, so she always shops for brands canned within the continental United States. Even Canadian brands are out. "They're too chummy with the communists," she says. She calls communists communists. Chain smoker. Once my father and I have started eating our meal, she brings a little ashtray to the table and puffs a cigarette between bites of food. This is far more disgusting than avocado eating. If I can possibly get out of it, I try not to have meals with my parents. I've complained to them about various nauseating things they do, but it doesn't do any good. Everybody has a family, my mother says. I don't know what that means. This is really interesting stuff, isn't it? Oh, mercy me, Kyle. Is that the time? Well, it's way past your bedtime. I think I've read enough for the time being. You'll have to wait until tomorrow for the next installment. Things are certainly getting exciting. Sleep is important for growing up big and strong. So sleep well, Kyle, and until tomorrow, you stay classy.